What's the context of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John's Gospel accounts? Spoiler, it's neither your Sunday school or church tradition, nor is it even the early church fathers, Roman Catholicism, Eastern Orthodoxy, or Protestantism. The context of the New Testament and the Gospel accounts is Second Temple Judaism. So when reading them, that's the lenses we should be wearing. That's one of my 4 main goals with this chapter-by-chapter series through the Gospel account according to Matthew. Now, I don't complain about long videos on the Bible, but have you noticed that there are many Bible studies out there on YouTube that are 1 to 2 hours on just a few verses? What about a full chapter within 10 to 20 minutes? And with focus on biblical apologetics, on the points where skeptics typically stop and bring up objections, as well as pointing out some of the chapter's more hidden golden nuggets. Those are my other 3 main goals with this series. Does that sound like something for you? No? Maybe? Well, did you know that it's impossible for humans to move thumbs like this, smile with teeth, and only breathe through nose? I'm kidding. But hey, look at you now, all smiley and excited for this Bible study. That's the spirit. Welcome to today's episode, where we'll be looking at a basic introduction to Matthew's authorship, reliability, dating, and context.
Let's do this.
Matthew is the Gospel account among the 4 that is placed first in the New Testament canon, including in our modern Bibles. But why is that? Because it was pretty much the unanimous and unquestioned consensus among the early church fathers, like for example Papias, Origen, Irenaeus, Eusebius, and Jerome. The majority of modern scholars typically date Mark as being the first one out. One of the main reasons why especially skeptic scholars do so is because they claim Mark has the lowest Christology. And I couldn't disagree more strongly about that reason. Mark is my favorite Gospel account, not because it's short and concise, or that I think that action speaks louder than words. If you are familiar with the ancient Near Eastern context and Second Temple Judaism literature, you simply cannot unsee the high Christology of Mark. I made a 3-minute video on this topic, linked in the description box below. Now, I don't have a problem with Mark being dated the first, because it probably was the first Gospel account of them all that was written in Greek. And since all the earliest manuscripts are indeed in Greek, which was the lingua franca and common language at the time also, it is what it is. But the unanimous and unquestioned consensus among the early church fathers on Matthew priority, but in the Hebrew language, I think carries a lot of weight. And I just find it reasonable to prioritize copying manuscripts to Greek, the lingua franca at the time, and a language that appealed to both Jews, Greeks, and Gentiles in general throughout the Roman Empire, rather than just Hebrew-speaking Jews. And scrolls of papyrus and codex, which the Gospel accounts were written on, will of course decay over time, for sure within 100 to 200 years. So if it's not being replaced and copied, of course we will eventually end up having no Hebrew manuscripts. Of course, because everyone is going Koine Greek on their copies. We should be thrilled for the abundant manuscript evidences we do have. We have over 5,800 early Greek manuscript copies. Many small fragments, yes, but also a decent amount of larger fragments, especially from Matthew and John. And scholars date these to be all from the year 150 to 300 AD.
Written on handwritten manuscripts. So it's an embarrassment of riches.
Now, who was Matthew? Matthew was a disciple of Jesus, but also a former tax collector, and they were hated by the Jews. So it's not the most attractive disciple name to put on your Gospel account, unless it's the authentic one and you want to be truthful. And there's also a very interesting money and number language in Matthew compared to the other Gospel accounts. So that sure gives a couple out of many clues about the original author. And to the whole overplayed card by skeptics that the Gospel are anonymous, well, on top of what I said now so far about Matthew, take a look at this video I made, linked in the description box below. Matthew's account, at least the Greek version, which is at bottom the earliest physical manuscript evidences we do have, was probably written in Antioch to the many Messianic Jews over there. Remember, there were thousands of believers before a single line of the New Testament was ever written. Christianity originated with an event, not a book. Now, for a bunch of reasons, I certainly hold to that Matthew's Gospel account was written early, and I will share two more reasons as to why I do that. First of all, I find it extremely ad hoc to late date Matthew after 70 AD, the temple destruction and fall of Jerusalem, which some scholars will do. But the temple destruction in 70 AD is completely missing from Matthew. Matthew, who wrote to a Jewish audience. This event, the fall of Jerusalem, completely rocked the Jewish world up until present day. They don't have a temple. In Matthew 24:1, Jesus says about the physical present temple that it will be destroyed. But in Matthew's entire account, not a single sentence about, and the temple was indeed destroyed, just as Jesus had said. And Matthew, who so often will write a comment about fulfilled prophecies about Jesus. He'd do it 4 times alone in chapter 2, for example. But there's niche, nada, nothing in his entire account. So the obvious conclusion is that it was written way before 70 AD. And why did I just say way before instead of just before? Here's why. Not only does the Apostle Paul, in his letters, quote Luke's Gospel account as scripture, Luke also wrote the book of Acts, but does not include the death of the disciple Peter, James, the brother of Jesus, or Paul, whom which most of the book focuses on. No, the book ends with Paul being in house arrest in Rome, but nothing about Paul's death. Luke does mention in the book of Acts the martyrdom of James, John's brother, and Stephen, but not these 3 biggest figures. So I think it logically follows that both Luke and Acts was written before Paul's execution in the mid-60 AD, which there are several external ancient sources attesting to. That will point to that both Luke and Acts was written before the mid-60 AD. And since all New Testament scholars agree on that Matthew came before Luke and Acts, that logically pushes Matthew's account further down on the timeline and closer to the time of Jesus. So there you have it, a basic introduction to Matthew's authorship, reliability, dating and context. I hope you stick around for this series. Episodes will pop up here and there between my weekly 5-minute topical apologetics and polemics videos. And that is the main thing that I produce here on this channel. If you are thinking, I wouldn't mind buying you a coffee for all this once a month or something, you can click the join button below and become a channel member. There's also a link to Patreon. Also, don't forget to like and comment and hashtag YouTube, subscribe, all that thing. Because remember, I'm neither a twerking half-naked woman or a funny cat. So I need all the help with YouTube algorithm boosting that I can get. See you in the next video. God bless.